Good evening, everyone, and happy Sunday. And I'm going to go through some articles that mostly came out on Saturday, yesterday. And I compiled a bunch of articles that I had found throughout the day yesterday and intended on doing a video yesterday evening around this time, and was actually held up because I was stocking some supplies and inventory of certain things that I purchased over the last few weeks. And I started to compile a list of things that I have in my closet to create an inventory, and it just took a lot longer than I thought it would take. So anyway, I'm going to go through some of the articles that came out yesterday on Saturday, and just because they came out yesterday, it doesn't mean that they're not important today, because everything, at least virtually everything that I'm going to cover, is still applying to today and the immediate future. So the first one I'm going to go into is this one on the Washington Post. This is actually it's kind of a real-time update, and I had highlighted several stories yesterday, but as you can see, when I refreshed the page before I started this, it actually appears to have refreshed, and there's a lot more stories that were published after the ones that I had initially highlighted. So the only one I'm going to stick with on this one without going all the way down here and finding older stories, including stories that are going to be coming out in my next video that's going to cover everything that happened on Sunday, today, March 15th. I'm just going to highlight this section here just to show that President Trump has tested negative for the virus, according to his physician, after days of his apparent reluctance to get tested. So I know that was something the media had been waiting on. I actually did not see that highlighted on really any websites that I could tell, unless it just came out, which it didn't. It looks like it came out late last night. So clearly there's more important news out there. I don't know why the press was so concerned with the president getting tested. I know that he's around a lot of people, but he's also a germaphobe, and he always, I'm sure, keeps his hands washed. I'm sure he's not shaking anybody's hand, and probably hasn't been doing so since back in January, when he was already well aware of the coronavirus situation, because he closed our borders from China and from the Chinese entering our country as a means to just try to mitigate the outbreak of the coronavirus. So that is all I'm going to get into on this article here, and just moving right along to the next one on abcnews.go.com, if it will load. And I think I had problems with this site earlier today. I don't think it's going to load. So let me just move on straight to the next one. This one is pertaining to Florida. And let me just do a quick refresh. Yeah, it's still the same. As of 6:10 p.m. Eastern Time, that is today, Sunday. So this obviously is one of the articles on here, or web pages on here, that covers right now as opposed to Saturday's news. But as of right now in the state of Florida, the state that I live in Tampa Bay, 136 Florida residents have been diagnosed positive for COVID-19. 6 have been diagnosed and isolated outside of Florida, and then 13 are non-Florida residents. Trying to get into the news in the next video. I won't cover it much right now. I'll just say that they are ratcheting up testing throughout this week. I hope that's true this time. They've been telling us that the last couple of weeks, and we haven't seen much of that. I believe that the number of infected has crossed over 3,000 across the country right now. I don't believe it's at 4,000. I think it's still in the 3,000 range, but I imagine I'll come across that at some point during this video. But because of spring break occurring, and the spring breakers were flooding into my area yesterday, and I'm sure today as well. I didn't go anywhere today, although I did yesterday morning. I had to run to a store because my glass on my vape stick broke. So, because I vape, and I needed that fixed. So what I did to try to keep another piece from breaking, I wrapped it with a whole bunch of rubber bands. So hopefully that will hold up. So because I don't know if they're going to shut down the mailing system. I seriously doubt they're going to. I think that they were very clear that mail is still going to occur. Although if you go on Amazon right now, it appears that a lot of Amazon Prime stuff, I'm actually not going to check it out right now, but if you look at specific things on Amazon, just regular stuff, not essentials, but just regular stuff, a lot of things for Prime appears to not being fulfilled and delivered to your door within 2 days. It looks like as of today, Sunday, a lot of the stuff that I was looking at earlier today wasn't going to show up to my house on Friday. I didn't order anything, but it just shows the backlog of stuff that they have. So I do have some essentials coming in through the mail still. So hopefully they'll arrive here on time. But anyway, here, let me just go ahead and continue. So this is just pertaining to Florida. I'm sure that most, if not nearly everyone who would come across this video, this is really going to affect you directly. But Florida is, if I'm not mistaken, it was yesterday, it was number 5 for the most infected states in the United States. And this breaks it down by county. In my county, Pinellas, there's only been 2 that have been confirmed so far. And I did just refresh the page, and it appears that it still remains at 2. So that's good news for my county because it's sat on that number for at least 3 or 4 days now. So I think that's some good news, but maybe it's also bad news. Maybe it's because there's not any tests that are coming through and nobody's getting tested here. That's a good possibility. So I don't know. We'll just have to see what happens over the next few days once they start rolling out more tests into more of the local areas as opposed to the statewide facilities. But all right, so I'm just going to stop with this one, just kind of leave it there, and then I'll just move straight to the next one. This comes from The Hill. The House passes the bill to help prop up economy from coronavirus. Big story from yesterday. The House early Saturday morning passed legislation aimed at mitigating the economic impact of the coronavirus by providing financial assistance to people impacted by the pandemic. The measure, which passed 363 to 40, includes provisions that would ensure that workers can take paid sick or family leave, bolster unemployment insurance, and guarantee that all Americans can get free diagnostic testing for the coronavirus. So that's a pretty big deal. Lots of money was freed up. A huge significant amount of money was pumped into the economy and also into efforts to fight the coronavirus that the Fed had released today, which I'll get into the next video. But yeah, in the meantime, I believe that's all. Oh no, I had highlighted some more down here. So the legislation that they passed yesterday would create a national paid sick leave policy for the first time, all but only through this year to address the coronavirus outbreak, to ensure that people won't face pay cuts if they miss work due to illness. Employers with fewer than 500 workers, as well as government employers, would have to provide 2 weeks of paid sick leave. But roughly 25% of American workers currently don't have the option of staying home if they are ill without losing a paycheck, leading to concerns that they could spread the coronavirus throughout their communities. Democrats initially introduced a bill on Wednesday that would have required all employers to let employees accrue at least 7 days of paid sick leave, in addition to another 14 days immediately when there's a public health emergency such as coronavirus. However, they ultimately decided to make it a temporary program for the coronavirus crisis to accommodate Republicans who have long opposed a national paid sick leave program. So it looks like the Democrats are trying to take advantage of this situation to try to roll out some permanent policy measures that I also would not agree with. I think under this extreme circumstances, or maybe they can write in the law that they're passing that only in such extreme circumstances, such as a pandemic or something that would rise to this level, that they could roll this out. But I don't think on a normal day-to-day thing, this time last year, I would totally not agree with something like this getting passed. But again, under the circumstances, this thing is really important because people, they need to get their paychecks. They need to get paid. They need to pay their rent. I mean, people got to pay their bills. So anyway, moving on. Let's see. Okay, let me just see where I was. The bill would allow for workers to have up to 3 months of paid family and medical leave related to being quarantined and caring for children whose schools are closed because of the coronavirus. Workers would receive a benefit from their employers amounting to at least 2/3 of their usual pay. A provision pushed by the GOP would provide for refundable tax credits as a way to help defray the costs for businesses adapting to the paid leave requirements. And yes, last week, I believe I covered that in the previous video. The president signed an $8.3 billion emergency spending package to boost agencies' efforts to combat the virus. So that's not really going to bolster the economy directly. Instead, it's just going to go straight to fighting the virus. I'm sure they're going to use that to pay for larger stockpiles of masks and respirators and all the necessary equipment that they need. So that's definitely some good news there. Republicans on Friday morning were reportedly still reluctant to back the legislation following changes made during the Pelosi Munchen negotiations. One GOP lawmaker told The Hill early Friday that the bill had, quote, not been changed sufficiently to protect small businesses from a devastating paid leave mandate, end quote. Nancy Pelosi indicated that the House will work on additional legislation to address the pandemic in the coming weeks. Quote, as the Senate works to pass this bill, the House will begin work on a third emergency response package to protect the health, economic security, and well-being of the American people, end quote, she said in a Dear Colleague letter announcing the deal early Friday evening. The bill would also bolster unemployment insurance by providing states with at least $1 billion in grants to deal with a rise in joblessness resulting from the impact of the coronavirus. Additionally, it would allow for emergency food assistance for households with children who normally receive free or reduced price meals at school in the event of school closures lasting more than 5 consecutive days. Work and work training requirements for food assistance would also be suspended. And just to add to this, just for a very quick and brief note, I'm going to cover more of this next video again. My state of Florida, they are implementing a program that will allow students who rely on school lunches. This program will allow the parents to be able to pick up a variety of meals to give to their kids who are under 18 years old. Just because of the amount of time that our schools will be out after spring break. I don't think this applies to the spring break week, but any time after spring break, if however long schools are out, they rolled out this program where parents can go pick up food supplies for their kids if they can't afford food because they were counting on the school system to feed their kids for them. All right, anyway, let me see where I was here. All right, got that. Following the vote, House members departed Washington and won't be back for at least a week for a previously scheduled recess. However, that recess could be extended if the coronavirus crisis worsens in the coming days. Several lawmakers have been self-quarantining due to exposure to people diagnosed with the coronavirus, while at least one Senate staffer has become ill with a virus. That actually makes me a little bit nervous there, because if the government completely shuts down, then there's going to be nobody that's going to be able to help you but yourself. And I don't think it'll get that bad. I mean, I think it's a little cowardly for them to quarantine themselves if they're perfectly healthy in a time like this, because we really need Congress in full session to be rolling things out as things will be coming up. And trying to shut down Congress, that's only going to make things much worse. So, if you're ill-equipped to deal with a high-risk situation, then you probably shouldn't be in public office. But that's just my opinion. Moving on to the next one. On Fox Business, if coronavirus hits your family, you'll need to have these documents and this information ready. And this is pretty important stuff, because if you do have an elderly person in your family who's diagnosed and they're gravely ill, there will be certain documentation that they may have in their possession that you're going to need before you end up having to make drastic decisions. And there's a few document examples that they outline down here below. Let's see. Oh, they took the highlighter away. That sucks. Okay. Anyway, I guess I'll just read through it real quick. The uncertainty surrounding the coronavirus has people making unusual preparations, including hoarding everything from hand sanitizer to toilet paper. But what you really need to be doing for yourself and your loved ones, particularly if you or a loved one is age 60 or older, and or your loved ones are located in other cities, states, or countries, is organizing key wishes and information. In our Future File business, we focus on helping people to organize the most important information they and their loved ones need for emergencies, health issues, aging, and even death. Based on our experience, here is what we suggest organizing to make sure that you have needed information together in case you or a loved one has contracted the virus or have any other health or emergency to contend with. So either with or without the virus, I mean, this information is pretty important to have with you if there's certain critical medical issues going on in your family. So the first thing is medical information. Medical information is critical to have easy access to. Make sure that you have organized your medical history, medicines, and other key medical information for your loved ones. Remember, nobody ever wishes they had prepared less for an emergency. If you end up in the hospital, this will help make sure that you get appropriate treatment quickly and efficiently without delays from not having access to this information. The next thing, also important, legal documents. In the face of the coronavirus, COVID-19, Google traffic on how to make a will is at its highest level ever. And yes, you should have a will in place, but you and your loved ones should also have in place a healthcare power of attorney and a property power of attorney in case you need a loved one to make a decision for you, should you or your loved ones become unable to make decisions about healthcare or assets. A healthcare power of attorney is also important if you have adult children at college or just out of the house completely. Otherwise, you won't be given access to their medical information or be able to weigh in on your children's treatments once they are legally adults. And the last important piece of information that you'll need is personal accounts and information. Getting a list of bills and accounts together and providing access to any online accounts to a trusted loved one is important in case someone gets quarantined and may not have access to take care of day-to-day activities, bills, and the like. Make sure that they also have access to keys and alarm codes for your home and office that they can access in case you end up in the hospital and you need a loved one to water plants or feed pets, access work files, and etc. There is more that you can prepare, but this is an incredible start that can really help your family. Getting your information and wishes together can help ensure that if something happens, you aren't left without key information and documents that you need. Do it today. Remember, nobody ever wishes they had prepared less for an emergency. And also, just to add on that, on this section here, if you have a highly trusted relative, a parent or a child, adult child or whatnot, it also might help to give them your username and password information for certain websites that you might want somebody to access if you're not able to. I know that that in the past there's been problems, and I've had to deal with this personally to some extent. But on like Facebook, it's a really difficult process to get Facebook to release somebody's profile to you, even if you're a next of kin. If the person who owned the Facebook profile has passed away, and all they really needed was just their password to begin with. So if you have a place or if you have somebody that you trust with that information, that is something that you can consider as well. So I just thought I'd throw that out there because I have read that in the past. With articles like this, they have tended to include that little tidbit of information. All right, moving on to the APnews.com. The Louisiana governor moves the primary because of the coronavirus. Democratic Governor John Bel Edwards signed an executive order delaying the April 4th primary until June 20th, according to his spokeswoman, Christina Stevens. In a statement, he described the step as, quote, necessary to protect the health and safety of the people in Louisiana from the risk of COVID-19. Early voting in Louisiana's election was scheduled to start in a week, but with a large number of elderly poll workers and worldwide concerns about people gathering in groups, Secretary of State Kyle Ardoin asked Edwards to sign the executive order, saying he didn't feel comfortable continuing with the election plans. Edwards had already declared a public health emergency for the state. On Friday, he announced that he was closing public schools through April 13th and banning large events with more than 250 people. State prisons have suspended visitation, and hospitals and nursing homes were limiting visitor access. As they were around the country, universities were moving to all online classes, and that does include my state as well. If I'm not mistaken, I think we have 15 universities statewide, and every single one of them has closed down their dorms, and they are moving to online only. And that's it for that article. I believe that Louisiana, if it didn't say it there, I honestly can't remember at the moment if it said it, but I believe that they said they were moving their presidential primary to June. I just can't remember the exact date. But anyway, moving on to the Washington Post. These federal workers were exposed to the coronavirus while serving the public. Now they're quarantined. While Alexander Spain, a supervisor with the Transportation Security Administration, or TSA, was told Tuesday to self-quarantine and not report to work at San Jose International Airport, he was not surprised. A screener he supervises who checks IDs and boarding passes had been sick for weeks and then tested positive for coronavirus. Spain, aged 58, was told to remain at home but said he was given no instructions for how to self-quarantine. So Spain said he just, quote, went out to grab some food twice. I stopped at a Chinese food restaurant and got some quick bites from 7-Eleven, end quote. On Thursday, the day he was scheduled to return to work, Spain called his supervisors in the morning, asking how to get tested for the virus. They acted like I was speaking French, he said in an interview. Spain's experience mirrors what federal workers across the country who deal with the public are saying about the lack of direction, protocols, and protective gear they need from their agencies. They fear these failures may cause them to become ill and spread the virus not only in the United States but across the world. The federal government has hundreds of thousands of workers who come in daily contact with the public. Workplace inspectors, mail carriers, hospital workers, park rangers, passport processors, Social Security representatives, and museum workers. And I'm sure many more than that. So yeah, hopefully they will get that under control because that is a huge liability. You don't want tens of thousands of government workers, especially people who deliver the mail, people who work in the hospitals, places like that. You don't want them to contract the virus because that's really going to put it's going to put a hard burden on an already stressed government at the moment. So hopefully they'll get this out of control. So I think it's kind of nice the Washington Post at least made this. Publish this for the world to see, or the nation to see at least, because there's so much other things that are going on, and I'm sure the government's overlooking this, but they are really stressed out right now. So with all this stuff going on, I'm sure that this is something that they're trying to address, but with I'm sure there's literally a million different things that are going on right now that they're trying to funnel all together to get this whole situation out of control. Yeah, but anyway, I wouldn't say the government employees, maybe all of them they should have the highest of all high priorities. I mean, definitely health workers should be up there at the top, elderly with pre-existing conditions and other very highly vital positions out there that can only make this situation drastically worse if they lose some more of those workers. So I don't know. We'll see. They said they're rolling out something like, what was it, like 1.3 million more testing kits throughout this week across all 50 states. They said they've established like 2,000 locations nationwide. So they said the number of infected is supposed to go way up over the next week. So hopefully these testing kits will be trickling down to people in the TSA and people across government as a whole. All right, so heading over to Fox News, New Zealand announces the world's toughest border restrictions.
Look at the latest coronavirus.
World's toughest border restrictions to fight coronavirus. New Zealand will now require anyone arriving in the Pacific country, including Kiwis themselves, to isolate themselves for 14 days in an effort to stop the spread of the novel coronavirus. Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern said the new rules, which begin from midnight Sunday local time, will mean New Zealand will have the world's toughest restrictions yet. Cabinet made far-reaching and unprecedented decisions today because these are unprecedented circumstances, Ardern said, according to Radio NZ. The countries exempt from the restrictions are a handful of Pacific islands that haven't yet had any cases of COVID-19. New Zealand has had only 6 confirmed cases of the illness. All of those have been connected with international travelers, and there have been no signs of any local outbreaks. This decision will mean New Zealand will have the widest ranging and toughest border restrictions of any country in the world, Ardern adding they are encouraging Kiwis to avoid non-essential travel overseas to, quote, reduce the risk of a New Zealander bringing COVID-19 in, end quote. She continued, quote, we do not take these decisions lightly. We know these travel restrictions will place a significant strain on the aviation industry, and we anticipate some routes will reduce or cease for a period of time, end quote. And that's it for that one. So that's pretty crazy. I mean, New Zealand, it's an island nation. It's a fairly small nation. So if they've only got a very small handful of cases, I would totally agree that they should do something like this just to keep it from spreading across their population. Like even Australia, I guess it's kind of hard over there on that side of the world since it came from China. I'm sure that travel between Australia and China is probably pretty frequent. But yeah, at first when I was thinking about this article, after I read it, I was thinking about Australia and if they could do the same thing, but their number is of course higher than New Zealand's number of infected. So I think they're probably past that point, but they can still easily shut down all their borders, just like New Zealand is. And I think there's a lot of countries out there that are starting to come out with that now. I think Germany's one of them, if I'm not mistaken. There's a couple of countries after New Zealand decided to do this, they mimicked New Zealand's decision and they started shutting down their borders as well. So anyway, moving right along. See, this will be on Channel 10 News, WTSP.com, 10 Connects, I believe. Florida schools traveling for spring break, you may not be able to return to school or work. So pertaining to Floridians and Florida residents, if you are a student, employee, or person who frequents schools in Hillsborough County, which is Tampa, and plans to travel for spring break, you may not be able to return to school or work. Pinellas County Schools, which is St. Pete Clearwater, announced that those who travel outside of the United States or are going on a cruise, quote, must isolate 14 days before returning to school, end quote. And I will self-update this right now and say that they have canceled all cruises in the entire cruising industry that will leave to cruise abroad. So I don't know if they shut down all cruises completely or if they only if they canceled the cruises that were destined to go abroad to a country outside the U.S. But I do know the ones that visit other countries have been canceled. So I assume that is probably the entire cruise industry. I believe that's what I read. But anyway, I just wanted to mention that. This requirement applies to students, staff, or anyone who needs to come on school property. So it was a really short little tidbit here, but I thought I would mention this because this, I'm sure, is going to trickle down to many other states. And if Florida ends up becoming a much higher infected state than they currently believe that it is, you're going to see spring breakers in the next week or two trying to head back to their home state. And a week or two from now, who knows what might happen if you live in, let's say, Kentucky, for example, and you came down to Florida, you're here right now for a week, maybe within 2 weeks, you head back to Kentucky, and the outbreak was so widespread in Florida that your state of Kentucky is going to prevent anyone from the state of Florida to go into their state without being quarantined for a couple of weeks. So I don't think that's exactly happening here completely. I mean, this is just Florida schools. I mean, I'm getting a little drastic with what I'm talking about, but that's what got me thinking about that when I was reading this. So take that for whatever it is. Let's see. Jack Ma offers to supply the U.S. with COVID-19 tests and masks on Wired.com. This was a really interesting one. I enjoyed reading this one. As the U.S. government promises to ramp up more COVID-19 testing, an unlikely billionaire is offering to lend his help. Jack Ma, co-founder of the Chinese tech giant Alibaba. Ma's philanthropic organization, the Jack Ma Foundation, said early Friday morning that it would donate 500,000 COVID-19 testing kits and 1 million protective face masks to the United States. The action came after U.S. health authorities had struggled for weeks to test people for the new coronavirus, falling far behind testing rates in other developed countries like Italy and South Korea. Quote, the crisis presents a huge challenge to all humankind in a globalized world, Ma said in a statement published to Twitter just after midnight on the East Coast. Quote, the pandemic we face today can no longer be resolved by any individual country. Rather, we need to combat the virus by working hand in hand. At this moment, we can't beat this virus unless we eliminate boundaries to resources and share our know-how and hard-earned lessons, end quote. The Jack Ma Foundation says, as it already contributed supplies to other countries combating the coronavirus, including Japan, Korea, Italy, Iran, and Spain. So that was interesting. And after reading that, I couldn't honestly tell you when the last time that an individual or even a government for that matter had given the United States aid in any way. It's always the United States giving other countries aid when disaster strikes. But in this case, it's not even a government that's offering to help out the United States. It's just a single individual, which I think is even more admirable, really. So really interesting. I don't know if the U.S. is going to take them up on it. The testing kits, I don't know. They would probably have to be approved by the FDA. If these testing kits were made in China or made overseas, I'm sure the FDA would have to approve it. So I don't know if they would say yes to the kits. Although I'm sure anybody here in the public, I mean, I'm sure they would be willing to take the risk of taking the test, but you would still have to send it off to a lab, and they might not accept it if the test kit's not approved. But we definitely could use the masks, that's for sure. So hopefully we'll take them up on that because almost all of our masks are made over in Asia anyway. So I wouldn't see what the problem would be for us accepting those masks. So very amazing story here. hopefully more people will start to be more philanthropic. Moving on to Fox 13 Tampa Bay. Tampa parks and recreation facilities, pools, and programs are canceled. Very short, but I thought I'd make this known. The Tampa Parks and Recreation Department will be closing all facilities and pools as of March 14th. All additional scheduled programs, tournaments, and events are also canceled until further notice to prevent the possible spread of COVID-19. So this is local, folks. I mean, this is just in the city of Tampa. It is a large city. It has a little bit over 1 million people. But this just goes to show that, I mean, if I'm reading it here on my screen, it's probably happening where you are too. Probably across all 50 states, maybe not West Virginia. As of right now at 7:20, well, as of, I would say, probably 6 o'clock p.m. On March 15th, 2020, Sunday, the only state without one single coronavirus case that's been officially reported is West Virginia. So they still have 0 cases. I'm sure that they unofficially do. I'm sure there are people there that are infected, but because of the strain on government and the inability for them to deliver an adequate enough testing kits to the country, I'm sure that's why they're not showing any cases, but I'm sure there's quite a few there. I mean, I'm sure there's many, many more thousands of people out there that are sick that we just don't know about because they haven't been tested. All right, anyway, this one is regarding the Dow Jones on Friday. That was definitely some good news. On my first video that I posted regarding COVID-19, the Dow Jones dropped somewhere like 2,000 points. It was insanely scary looking. It was going faster and faster each day. I think when Tuesday or Wednesday it spiked up a little bit, gained like 600-700 points, and then it like tanked on Thursday, down almost 2,000 points. But it has jumped back up again. I know it's because of government. Not government intervention directly, but I believe it was because, in part, them working on that bill or that bill getting passed or something like that. There was something that was infused into the economy somehow, or reassurance that we're on top of the coronavirus and we're doing the best we can. And there's a lot of money that's coming into the economy, which rallied a lot of these investors to have a little faith in the stock market and bring it back up, at least the Dow Jones, bringing it up 1,985 points, 9.36% rise, which I believe is the largest single day increase in the Dow Jones, and I think across the entirety of Wall Street, the best single day that they've ever had. So talk about a roller coaster. I mean, this has been insanely crazy. So we'll see what happens next week. Hopefully it steadies out. I don't like the whole rising 2,000, falling 2,000, rising 2,000. It's a little too nerve-wracking. So we'll see what happens on Monday. I mean, this is from Friday afternoon / evening, and it doesn't move over the weekend because the stock market's not open, at least not New York, I don't believe. All right, so WESH Channel 2, that is on WESH.com. Walt Disney World is to close over coronavirus concerns. Most people have probably heard of this by now. I mean, that was shocking when they closed Disneyland. And as soon as I heard that, I knew within a couple of days they're closing Disney World. It doesn't make any sense to close Disneyland and keep Disney World open, especially Disney World, because especially people from Europe, people from all over the world, they just flock to Orlando. So it is official. And I believe that this was initially put out on Friday. Friday, March 13th, 2020, 1:51 p.m. So yeah, this is kind of old news. So this isn't really Saturday news, but still, maybe I won't go over all this. But
so we'll start with Disney World.
Shut up, video. Walt Disney World will close its doors to limit the spread of the coronavirus. The closure announcement happened on the heels of a similar announcement from the park's California counterpart, Disneyland. Disney World will be closed March 16th and stay closed through the end of the month. Disney Cruise Line will also suspend all new departures beginning on Saturday through the end of the month. The hotels at Walt Disney World will remain open, as well as retail and dining complexes until further notices. That is, unless the state, or perhaps the county, or the region decides to start banning any groups of 200 or more, or maybe 100 or more. I think some areas in the United States, there's a couple of those ordinances that they had passed, like no groups of 100 or more. I think New York City, it's like 200 or more, maybe 250 or more. And I saw Cuomo's latest update, his Sunday update, a couple hours ago, and people were, the members of the press were asking him, if we're only allowed to have 200 or 250 people at the most meet up together, then why are these restaurants in Manhattan and other parts of New York City, why are they, packed with people that are well over 250 people? And he said, well, if that's the case, then NYPD needs to be called and have that place shut down. So, yeah, so restaurants are not supposed to be um, housing people, not housing, but having people have dinner in their establishment in numbers of over 250. But sounds like it's happening anyway. I don't know how they handle that with grocery stores. I don't know if they do head counts, and as somebody leaves, they let another person go in. I'm not sure how that works, but I mean, whenever I go grocery shopping, my store probably has 150, maybe 200 people in there at any given time. But I mean, Walmart, forget about it. And that's hundreds and hundreds of people. So anyway, I'll just leave it there.
World.
Walt Disney World, it's shut down till the end of the month. I'm sure it'll probably be until further notice. I don't see this thing going away within 2 weeks, but we can always be optimistic. This is a big one. The WWE is putting contingency plans in place if Hillsborough County cancels WrestleMania 36. I haven't seen an update to this since yesterday. Let's see. So this was published 2 days ago. I read the updated version, so it hadn't changed as of Saturday. They haven't updated this page specifically, or this specific article. So the WWE may have not made a decision, but Hillsborough County hasn't either. The WWE suspects that Hillsborough County is going to order this event canceled, and I know they will. Everything else has been ordered canceled. I couldn't fathom the WWE still moving forward with what, maybe 100,000-ish people showing up. The city of Tampa is definitely going to shut that down. And I don't know if they mention it in the article or if I've read it somewhere. Yeah, okay, it's mentioned in the article. So anyway, I'll start here up here on the top. The WWE and Hillsborough County appear to be engaged in a standoff about the status of WrestleMania 36 as events and mass gatherings across the country are being canceled to avoid the spread of COVID-19. I'm hoping that Vince McMahon and WrestleMania and WWE will make the call themselves, but a week from now, if they've not done that, and if we're still in the situation we're in, we'll probably have to pull the plug on that, said Hillsborough County Commissioner Les Meller. But in a statement, the WWE stood firm. Quote, while we remain committed to hosting WrestleMania at Raymond James Stadium on Sunday, April 5th, we are putting contingency plans in place in the event that it is canceled by government officials, civil authorities, and or local venues, the WWE said in part. So it sounds like the WWE, they're gonna be like, no, this show's gonna go on until we're forced to cancel. I mean, that's not cool, WWE. I mean, what the hell? Hillsborough County Sheriff Chad Cronister. Okay, let me start over. Hillsborough County Sheriff Chad Cronister said the community safety has to come first. Quote, I commend every sports franchise for erring on the side of caution. I hope the WWE follows suit. I don't ever want to see people put profit over public safety. Make no mistake, calling off WrestleMania would put more than $150 million of economic impact in jeopardy, according to numbers from the WWE. The show is the Super Bowl of wrestling, a global event that attracts fans from all 50 states and nearly 70 countries. So Tampa, of course they'd be reluctant to shut that down. I mean, that's $150 million that the city has expected to receive. And as a result, I'm sure that they're moving, government budgets around. They've probably already pre-allocated all this money into different parts of the city. So for this money to not suddenly show up, I mean, they're going to have to reorganize a lot of areas of funding, I would imagine. So, I mean, this isn't something that Tampa is looking forward to doing by any means. Local officials say they'll likely make a decision in a week if the WWE doesn't. And I mean, we don't even have to wait a week. They're going to cancel it. They're definitely going to cancel it. Everything has been canceled. Okay. Almost done here. Maybe I am done. Let's see. I've got coronavirus. Trump test negative. Okay. I believe I already covered that. Oh, yeah. This is the last thing that I wanted to share. How to make your own hand sanitizer. So a lot of people, they're going on eBay. They're trying to buy sanitizer for crazy amounts of money. But instead, what you could do, you can go online and try to find a recipe that you could use to make your own hand sanitizer. It might be it might be sticky. It might be a little bit crude, but at least it'll be effective at killing germs and it should kill the coronavirus with no issue. So, how to make your own hand sanitizer. And if you want, you could go on wired.com. Honestly, I would just Google that, how to make your own hand sanitizer, and you'll find multiple different pages that you'll be able to search yourself. Because this page here will have a couple of sets of ingredients, but you might be able to find a different web page that has just as effective as a method that has ingredients that you already have at home that you won't have to risk going to the store to try to pick up, if it's even there at the store at all. All right, so anyway, making sure that, or let's, first of all, we have to make sure that the tools you use for mixing are properly sanitized. Otherwise, you could contaminate the whole thing. Also, the World Health Organization recommends letting your concoction sit for a minimum of 72 hours after you're done. So if you do make this, don't start using it right away. Just let it sit for 72 hours. That way the sanitizer has time to kill any bacteria that might have been introduced during the mixing process. Nothing beats washing your hands. You definitely cannot emphasize that enough. Washing your hands is way better than hand sanitizer. Always has, always will be. At least as far as we know, it's always going to be the best option. Even using a bar of soap, and I was surprised to read this too. If you use a standard bar of soap, that will even kill the coronavirus. It's effective enough to kill it. And I read an article where they got into the nitty gritty on how it destroys the like the molecular structure of the virus in such a way. But yeah, any kind of hand soap, bar soap. I guess it doesn't have to be antibacterial, because I don't think that bars of soap are antibacterial. Maybe that lava soap that they used to make, if they're not making it anymore. Anyway, okay, rambling. Potency matters. As long as you're going to need some alcohol. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, your sanitizer mix must be at least 60% alcohol to be effective. But it's better to get way above that. A bottle of 99% isopropyl alcohol is the best thing to use. Your regular vodka and whiskey are too wimpy and will not cut it. Because your standard bottle of vodka and whiskey, I can already tell you, it's 40% alcohol. Or 80 proof. But it's 40% alcohol, and they're saying you need at least 60. So that stuff's not good enough. It's not going to kill coronavirus if you try to pour vodka on it like they do in the movies. Doesn't work, people. You need isopropyl alcohol. So the quick recipe, which they're calling the gel recipe, you use isopropyl alcohol, you use aloe vera gel, and then you can use tea tree oil. So you mix 3 parts of isopropyl alcohol to 1 part aloe vera gel. Add a few drops of the tea tree oil to give it a pleasant scent and to align your chakras. Whatever. Come on, Wired. So that's it. That's as simple as that. And it'll probably be sticky, because aloe vera, if I remember correctly, it tends to be a little sticky, but at least it'll kill the virus. And plus, if you don't have soap, if you somehow run out of it, but you do have these ingredients coincidentally, you can put those 3 together. You can sanitize your hands with this concoction, and then if your hands are sticky after, I believe you could just rinse it off your hands, right? If you've already killed the virus by, cleaning your hands with it. Who knows? I would just stick to whatever it says here. I mean, I'm no expert. And the other one they have is the better recipe, which they're calling the spray recipe. You can use isopropyl alcohol, you can use glycerol, and then you also have to have hydrogen peroxide, as well as distilled water and a spray bottle. So if you mix the right parts of these together, then you'll have a spray recipe, which they claim to be the better one. The aloe mixture gets the job done, but aloe also leaves your skin annoyingly sticky. So there you go. So here's a recipe that's less sticky and more potent, based on the mix recommended by the World Health Organization. You mix 1 2/3 cup of alcohol with 2 teaspoons of glycerol. You can buy jugs of glycerol online, and it's an important ingredient because it keeps the alcohol from drying out your hands. If you can't find glycerol, proceed with the rest of the recipe anyway, and just remember to moisturize your hands after applying the sanitizer. Mix in 1 tablespoon of hydrogen peroxide, then another half cup of distilled or boiled and then cooled water. If you're working with a lower concentration solution of rubbing alcohol, use far less water. Remember, at least 2/3 of your final mixture has to be alcohol. Load the solution in spray bottles. This isn't a gel, it's a spray, and you can wet a paper towel with it as well, and you can use that as a wipe. So instead of going on eBay, and I kid you not, I even went on Walmart.com and they're allowing this to happen on their site. You wouldn't have to go on eBay, Walmart.com, wherever else, probably Amazon, et cetera, and pay $120 for a single bottle of Lysol disinfecting wipes. And I'm not kidding. As of Sunday, 15th of March, that is happening online all over the place. And people on eBay, they're bidding for it. There's like 15 bids on one, 20 bids on another. I mean, they're auctioning the crap out of these things, and eBay's supposed to be shutting those down, but there's a lot of them up there. But anyway, that's pretty much all I have for this. And I will do a video consisting of the Sunday articles here in just a little bit, but I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up, edit it, put it together. Or I may just jump in and just get this other video out of the way and just throw them both up there on YouTube at the same time. But that's all I have for now. And until next video, thank you very much for watching or listening, and be extra, extra careful out there.